I figured that we moved on from fake Chainsaw Man. To be completely honest, I thought Fujimoto just forgot about it. Turns out that's not actually the case. But now it does raise a lot of questions. What exactly is fake Chainsaw Man? What is the purpose of a fake Chainsaw Man? Why bring it back now? Is it going to be valuable, important, or is it something that we're just going to lay off to the side like previously? Considering that we are going into the ending of the story, the big climax, I imagine a lot more things are going to come back. A lot more plot points that we originally might have thought weren't going to be played upon are now going to be a little bit more prevalent. And this is one of those storylines. Honestly, I don't know how influential this will be. I don't know how impactful it will be. Clearly, there's a level of creativity and thought going into it where it does actually matter. And that's not to say that other things don't matter, it's just a level of priority. What do you prioritize going into the climatic final section of your story? What things should have that forefront presence compared to others lingering in the background? Fujimoto has decided that fake Chainsaw Man is rather valuable, and for good reason. It is a fake Chainsaw Man. How is that possible? What does that mean? Who is this individual? Is it a fan? Is it a mimic? Is it a devil or a human? We don't really know. The end of this chapter does give us a little bit more to work with though. We now have two designs of the fake Chainsaw Man, one being a humanoid male version and the other being a hybrid full armor version, similar to Pochita. I do wonder if this is a school student. However, not only have they appeared on top of this school building, which could easily be coincidence, but the first time that they appeared, it looked like they were in a similar fit to the school students alongside those other school students. Does that make sense? When they first showed up, the original idea is that one of those school students at the beginning of Chainsaw Man Part 2 is actually the fake Chainsaw Man, whether it be the really big buff dude or another character, etc. There was 3 to 4 different characters to pick from. The issue with that is that none of them are really prevalent or hold any value. They're just random characters that were serving a purpose. I will say I really like this design though. It takes it a step above what I originally expected a fake Chainsaw Man to look like. I thought perhaps it would just be pure mimicry, but it looks more like someone is trying to mimic Chainsaw Man off of memory and that it doesn't actually work. I use the word mimicry very purposefully because the more I look at the design, the less intentional it all seems. It looks like it's more of a amalgamation of ideas on what Chainsaw Man should or does actually look like from the small snippets that potentially this person has actually seen. A way that I visualize this is by looking at the design and looking at all of the intentional components that make up Pochita. He is very mechanical. He's very purposely designed to resemble a mechanical chainsaw mechanism, including his body parts. The one oddity that comes out from it is the umbilical cord that's wrapped around his neck. Fake Chainsaw Man is more melded together. There's not intricate parts, but more so flesh joining into other flesh and bone melding into bone to kind of conform to the idea. With the one oddity, similar to the umbilical cord, not actually being an oddity, is a organ-like flesh cape. For these reasons, it's why I call it mimicry. It's not a perfect version of Chainsaw Man, it's not even close to the idea of it, and all of the components or parts aren't separated but molded together. If you were to take this idea further, perhaps it is a devil that looks nothing like Chainsaw Man and is obviously forming or merging into their idealistic version of it, their fanboy version. Currently, that would make the most sense to me. They probably have a different look, an original look in terms of their devil form or hybrid form, whatever it may be, and then they are going into this form. Obviously, the alternative is that somehow, some way, this is a fake Chainsaw Man, like through and through from start to finish. And because it is a fake Chainsaw Man from start to finish, it's why it looks like a very grotesque hybrid of it. While this moment is definitely the highlight of the chapter, death is interesting. I like the characterization that Fujimoto does. It's always sweet, simple, to the point. You know exactly what you're getting. when it comes to his character work. And now we get to see Death firsthand interact with other people. One of the biggest things that you should take from this is what I mentioned previously, is that Death seems to have not only a superiority complex to a degree, but a savior complex. I talked previously about all of the horsemen having opposites, and they usually reflect their opposites quite heavily. Control wanting genuine love and a family, war potentially having an identity egotistical problem, famine wanting to cherish and preserve what is meaningful to her, and then death valuing life and having a savior complex through death. Having this type of balance for the horsemen makes them very interesting individuals, because it kind of depends on your perspective and how evil they could truly be. It makes their agendas more personalized as well, rather than just being omniscient, horrifying creatures representing what their name is. I know a lot of people were upset that Death wasn't a creature, a big, hideous abomination, primal fear that was wreaking death and destruction. And while this design isn't the most unique for Death, it's exactly up Fujimoto's alley for all of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Why change the formula now? Going back to that characterization, a savior complex is a funny thing to have, trying to save someone by taking away their earthly desires through death. What's funny is that you actually have seen a version of this before, and very recently. Aging also had a version of this, a place where humans could reside by taking away their age and allowing them to be immortal and merge with trees and give back to the earth type of thing. While from a human perspective, obviously that sounds torturous and horrible, endless cycle of pain and suffering that is kind of trapped in your own head. But from another perspective, it's kind of tranquil. It's peaceful in a way that if you take away the limitations of aging, that eventually you will turn into a tree and kind of become one with earth, and one could perhaps imagine that to be peaceful. You just assimilate into one another. While the two differences between aging and death obviously operate on different scales, death is more forward in approach, running that savior complex herself and wanting to kill people to save them from the horrifying things that could happen. I guess the real question is that why does it also seem like death is running against the prophecy? For this whole story, we've been told that the prophecy would usher in death, the age of devils, so to speak. But I truly think the interpretation of it has been wrong this entire time. Not only from our perspective with theories and ideas, but also in world. Public safety have the wrong idea of what the age of devils actually means and what death actually represents. And here's a way to kind of prove it. If the prophecy really did mean the age of devils would come with death, ushering in that new world, why is death trying to free people from the suffering that's about to ensue? Would it not make more sense for death to kind of just ride in and be horrifying and usher in that age of devils? When that idea comes to your mind, the one thing that stands out is what we found out recently, that the scary being right here potentially isn't death itself, but war. Yoru is the problem, and Yoru will usher in the age of devils because she could have complete, utter control. And this is what I mentioned in my previous video talking about eternal war. That if Yoru can control the likes of chainsawman, which potentially gives her access to control death and other primal fears, not only would she able to inflict eternal war, but she also controls death and extinction itself. So she could realistically stop people from dying or continue to resurrect them, and also stop the idea of extinction, people getting erased. She could fight other primal fears and take control of them using the power of Potita and Death and other devils alike, gun, tank, etc., and just continuously add to her arsenal of weaponry. She is war. That is what she represents. That is what she wants. The Age of Devils might not have anything to do with death itself, but more so to Yoru's Age of Devils. Now, if you run the example of death, perhaps knowing that this is coming, would she not want to try and save people through her own weird perspective? Death would be the only thing that could save you from what is about to come with Yoru and eternal war. Or perhaps a place like Aging's world. Of course, this might not happen at all. This is just taking a lot of different ideas and pushing it a bit further into reach, over exaggeration, but that's the fun of it, right? I think there's a lot of value in this type of idea because it does lead to a conflict that is rather concerning. The idea that the only person that could actually defeat someone like War is Pochita, and if you have to defeat War, you have to kill Asa Mitaka, and if Pochita is the only one that can actually do it, then Denji has to kill Asa. There is a couple of people that I really want to see before the story ends. Hopefully, they play a role or a part into what's to come. Kishibe, Naruto, or Control to some kind. Kobeni, of course, as well as Power. I would be very happy with this group and potentially their influence towards the end.